So it just takes over your mind a little bit, and I think a lot about light as kind of this origin of time, this origin of cosmos, this like originating draw and explosion into all of these other things that can be. So what is that draw? What is that glow that brings us close? I think it's kind of this like hum of origin, kind of like a calling back to Big Bang kind of cosmos.
Neon lights, I'm baffled. Pick it apart like samples. Give me all I can handle. Light me up like a candle. I'm taming lightning. Percy got that lightning. Plasma in my veins.
Hello, Lightning Tamers. Percy here. This is episode number 60. Today we have a pleasure of diving into the fascinating world of light and art with the incredible Kacie Lees. Born in St. Louis in 1986, Kacie has emerged as a prominent figure in the art scene, leaving her mark in Brooklyn, Chicago, and Los Angeles. With a BFA from the School of Art Institute of Chicago and a MFA from the School of Visual Arts in New York, Kacie's artistic journey is nothing short of inspiring. As a dedicated teaching artist in NYU and SAIC, in addition to the Museum of Neon Art and Urban Glass, she not only creates mesmerizing works, but also imparts her knowledge to the next generation of artists. Her recently published book, Neon Primer, a Handbook on Light Construction, has become a cornerstone in understanding the intricate world of neon bending. In this episode, we'll explore Kacie's creative process, the influences behind her work, and the profound impact of light on art. Stay tuned for a captivating conversation with Kacie Lees, a true luminary in the world of contemporary art. Welcome to the podcast, Kacie Lees.
Thank you, Percy. So happy to be here. I love taming lightning.
Yeah, it's been, we connected through the internet in ways, and I have a copy of your first handprint of your book. I think it's 41 out of 100 or something like that, some kind of weird number like that or whatnot. But it's funny trying not to be too precious with things like that. I know it's an informational resource, but also it's an art piece in of itself. But I like showing it off, so I do take care, but I also kind of let it be in the world to be experienced. But how are you doing today?
Thanks for saying that. I've had that response a couple of times from people, like James Akers and Ali Feeney. They bought one copy and then they immediately bought another copy because Ali was like, James is going to get his all dirty. Like, I want just one that stays in a box. I was like, that's so sweet. I'm good. I'm in Chicago. It's rainy and we're fine with that because it's kind of warm. So I'll take it. I'm just don't like the cold. Anything but the cold.
Now, Chicago, like your home base? Because I know you bounce around quite a bit around, nationally here in the U.S.
Yeah, I bounce. I'm quite a bouncer. I live in New York and Chicago, so my primary address is in New York, and I teach a lot here this year. So I'm kind of set up in a spot where I have my studio and a nice little parking spot, and I mean, friends in the building. It's a good fit for me out here. But yeah, I'm always bouncing around, and I'll be back and forth New York and Chicago like at least 3 more times this year. They're not that far away, so it's not that bad.
Yeah. You just got to be someone who's comfortable or dedicated to being what I like to call a globetrotter of sorts, because you just kind of never stop moving. And it's not unheard of for many of those involved in neon to be someone who is on the move and on the road and dropping things off or shipping things here and there. So to me, it's not unusual, right? Just thinking about the concept.
I'm seeing it more and more too. I mean, my kind of lifestyle has been shaped by this practice, and there's just so few places that offer facilities, right? Mm-hmm. So The Art Institute of Chicago has their own facilities. That's where I learned how to do neon. So I'm really grateful to be back teaching there. It's a really comfortable space with lots of room and lots of ways to incorporate other departments and other media. That's kind of like built into their structure of education. And then, Urban Glass in New York hosts the NYU schools and the Pratt schools and all of those kind of New York art-based schools. And then I just can't get enough of the Museum of Neon Art. I love it. You've been there, right? Yeah.
I have not been there. I've been out in that space. Maybe I was I don't know, 4 hours away at one point, but like it was a very short trip in 2020 in January. So like literally a month or so before the world flipped over on itself. So it's still one of those places I want to visit. So I just had to find somewhere in my schedule I can dedicate to that.
Yeah, we're totally worth the trip. Great community. Everyone is just psyched to meet everybody and share their knowledge and kind of build the lit world.
Yeah,
a good time.
And
their collection is incredible.
Their collection, they got neon, they got plasma. I have a plasma collection. Their executive director Corey Siegel is great. Hardest working person I know in this industry.
Yeah.
Sorry, Heather, but just case difference. Corey is working hard and she's doing well, and I love the energy she brings into Mona.
Yeah, she rules.
So let's start talking about you a little bit. Can you tell us a little bit about your artistic journey and what initially drew you to the mediums of neon, video, and print? Because we know you through your expressions of neon, but you also work with video and print.
Yeah, when I was kind of thinking about this, I went back and my birthday is July 1st. So it's kind of always been in tandem with the 4th of July and fireworks and kind of these, this like double meaning for me about celebration and freedom and this like reverence for light. So I think if I go back to as far back as I can remember happiness and joy, it would be kind of like birthday celebrations around light. And I think that's been kind of a central identity for me for a while, kind of having this lifelong kinship with light. And then I went to SAIC, which has a pretty big push on interdisciplinary practices. The way that they're set up, you can kind of work between departments. You don't have to declare yourself a painter or a photographer. There's a lot of classes specifically about interdisciplinary connections. So I think going to that really kind of changed my brain. And it started helping me see that the world is connected, to be able to continuously look for these links, these threads that tie together different parts of different materials or different parts of the world together. And that's where I found neon at SAIC. So you're kind of primed in that brain space where you're like, like, what is this? What's going on? And then you try neon and you're like, oh, it's kind of like photography. It's kind of like fashion. It's kind of like painting, right? It has all of these connections if you want to make them and if you want to go there. So I think kind of working in that lab physicalized this like handheld firework situation that I was after. And I just got sucked in. I don't know anyone that doesn't get sucked in. So I also think that like my job is really easy. I'm just like, hi, I want to see something fun. And everybody's like, yes. So that's kind of, the printmaking and the installation art and the photography, like the video work and stuff, all of that is some kind of translation of light and its affective qualities and kind of intermediary approaches.
Believe it or not, I tried to resist getting into neon.
Yeah.
It sounds weird, right?
Yeah.
Why would the guy who's doing a podcast about neon and plasma resist going into neon? I couldn't. You can't resist neon if you're trying to make something light up, regardless of how you approach it. And, hearing you talk about how your formative, college experience in the arts has brought in more interdisciplinary rather than an intense focus in one area to like declare your major. I want to talk more about this, but I'm going to hold that off to a different podcast. But I do want to say that like most people come from sort of the opposite end, and a lot of times in their education, and I don't know. I think the way that's come about that you've come through is a little bit more in line to what college is supposed to originally be, like an expression, not just exposure, but to get you to expose and act on a variety of different knowledges so that you could be absorbed in a lot of different, before you can focus on something, which gives you a lot more of like the flexibility and adaptability and as you move post academia.
Yeah, I see that. And, there's kind of just this idea that like, art is life, right? So it's just like, why separate it? Why go through all of the work of delineating this is not that, this is not that, this is this thing, I just have never really seen it like that. And I think it makes it more approachable for everybody.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of people in my family that are like, oh, I don't have an artist bone in my body. Like I'm not artistic. It's like, it's just, it's just the part of moving through the world. I've never really thought about it any differently. I don't really know why. I don't really know. Maybe I don't have a great enough memory to go back into childhood like this, but I'm sure there was some kind of pivotal thing.
Yeah. If I could even say for myself, it's really just, I did martial arts before I kind of made this declaration to do something creative, artistic. And it was the shift in the martial arts world from single style, like, just do karate, just do boxing, just do, Muay Thai, to like when MMA and UFC became popular, then you were adapting and learning from other styles.
Yeah.
I think that flipped me through, even though I went through undergrad as like, you get exposed to all this stuff, you got to choose that one thing to focus on. And that allowed me to just do that in my own way. And I think everyone does that eventually or has absorbed that. It's about teaching, whether you're teaching students in the arts or you're teaching people just doing a workshop with you, to like realize creativity is not just what you can make in what your limited perception of art is, but how you approach a problem with actions of solutions that produce solutions.
Yeah. And it's a way to get to know our world, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think just having that inquisitive approach and that kind of open approach is the only way we're going to get to some kind of like communal stasis.
Yeah.
Will be mutually beneficial for everybody. So.
Exactly.
Let's go art.
Art is for the win. STEAM, not just STEM.
Right? Yeah, let's put that A in there.
Yes, indeed. So my second question for you here is, you have your book, Neon Primer, a handbook on light construction. It's received a widespread acclaim, as we kind of discussed earlier before in this podcast here. What inspired you to delve into the world of neon bending to write this guide? Like, what was it in neon that like, hey, I want to do this. I want to write about this subject.
Well, I think, I had worked in neon for like 10 years before I started like collecting all of the materials, the notes, the scratch. Like you pick up so much from just trying neon and working in it. And it kind of changes the way that you think about different materials and luminescence and like what is happening in light, like what is inside of light. So I think after so long of working in it, I wanted to find a book that had all the answers to the questions that I wanted to know. And it didn't exist. There's just very few neon books that are out there. And so when I started teaching, I would start kind of making these one sheets about our course overview, like what's going on, what are the basics, and then also what's our trajectory, how do we follow up with our practice, how do we care for the glass, how do we install the glass, how do we do all of these things that like I know you're just going to email me about later, right? So like I'm just going to put it on the sheet so you can have it on the sheet, and so like hopefully that's like um a step ahead for you. So I just had so many of those. I had like 20, 30 of these sheets and like all of these notes and all of these scans from books and stuff like this. And I wanted to make the book that I couldn't find. I wanted to make this resource um, that has all these material links and has all of these tangent lines to scientific discoveries and contextual footnotes to art history, mostly kind of movements and things that I'm interested in, be it like Fluxus and anti-art. So I just started kind of exploring this in book form. And I think book form is like one of my favorite forms to work in because it's a pocket guide, you know, you can just take it with you and it has all your answers. Um, and I wanted to use the book form to kind of explore these rare elements that are often found in artist books that are not found in print on demand books, be it fold out pages or like clear pages or kind of different ways to explore the idea of the footnote. Right before I started, I read Claire Bishop's Artificial Hells, which is about participatory art. And the notes section in there is like 70 pages long. So like all of the, like you're reading this thing and it has like, oh, go to this note. And then you go in the back and it's like a second book, you know, you're just like, wow.
Yeah.
So being that it's about participatory art, it's showing kind of all these connections that lead to this one piece, you know, and I think it gives a really good overview of how like what inspiration kind of puts together to make an artwork or to make a scenario or a set of scenes. And so kind of with that in mind, I started being like, well, when I'm writing the book, do I want it to be Chicago manual style? Like, yeah, that seems appropriate. Do I want to use like the NASA style guide to inform like how I speak about like celestial bodies and planets? And I did like for most of the part, but I capitalized sun, which is like not of their style guide because I just wanted it to be like such a presence.
Yeah, you want to stand out visually.
Yeah, and I want it like Sun is a like main character of the book. So I think like it's important to capitalize it. Yeah, just like kind of stuff like that. So you get to kind of play in book form. I also started there's like a holography handbook that I think is like a really great reference as well. And it's kind of like this hand illustrated book with just the basics of the stuff that you need. So I kind of just found a lot of sources and wanted to kind of riff off of those and be able to make those fold outs and be able to make those clear pages that like build to tell a story. And so then I just got sucked in and I couldn't stop.
Was writing something that you were comfortable with? Or because like for me, writing has never been comfortable, but is that correct? Like writing was something that was comfortable for you, which has led you to be more apt to taking on these things?
No, I'm pretty questionable about my writing at all times. I had a lot of editors and from kind of all over the place, like a few people that were neon specific, but it's just so much text. You really can't give them the whole, hi, edit my whole book. Luckily, my older sister is a writer, so she was able to look over and she didn't give me that many edits because she really wanted it to be in my voice. So I hope that comes out. You know, I hope that it becomes approachable and it becomes kind of this like standard tone throughout the book so that, you know, you can add what you need to add in the gaps or in the spaces. But yeah, I did, it was my January 2020 project right before before the end of the world. And it then became like a very concentrated time to focus on this. And kind of at the same time, for pandemic related reasons, we were converting my neon techniques class to an online format, right? So online being, we're making, neon online. It's just like, that thing that function. So I ended up writing like a history, theory, and materiality course kind of based on the content of what I was reading for the book. So it really kind of worked in tandem to think about making these proposals for neon that we were going to make, right? Making these bending patterns and these layouts and these designs and these conceptual frameworks that support these like future works that when we get into the lab, we can make, or if we want to go talk to a local vendor, we can have them work with them to fabricate it, So I think, that displacement of the materiality was also probably really informative in getting this content into like page.
Yeah, I found some other people had a similar experience where, for example, Stephanie Lifshitz had wanted to teach a class just focused on patterning.
Yeah.
Because, when you're getting to work in the material, whether it's your own studio or you had to rent somewhere else, you want to make your time utilize as efficiently as possible. If you have to spend the first hour getting your pattern written out, then you wasted time that you could have been doing that where you didn't need that studio at that time. And that was a really cool thing. She did a online class on how to work with Illustrator and provide a smaller alternative programs that, if you don't want to spend the subscription fee, you can use Inkscape or whatever and do something very similar and print that out and you have your pattern ready to go, which is exciting. Creativity means adaptability.
Yeah, totally. I think, kind of later on in that year too, Kate Hush and I paired up to do a class through Urban Glass that was retro sculpting the neon artwork. So yeah, we were doing patterns. We were doing, kind of explaining how color works in neon, which is not forthright. Every person just thinks that you mix the gases together, like you mix paint together. And I think, light isn't paint, it doesn't, it's not like matter. So it just doesn't play the same games. So being able to kind of introduce the interactive components of the phosphors and kind of break it down was really so much fun. And we actually met so many cool people that signed up for that class too.
Yeah.
So.
That's awesome. You have a second edition that is made for the book. Were there any changes to that, or is that, or is it more how it was produced?
Sure. Yeah. Second edition, is a print on demand book. So it doesn't have foldouts, but it does have all the same information. It doesn't have patterns, right? So you can print those out. They're like through my website. You can just print them out. But the second edition is print on demand. And it's the one you can get dirty, I think. It's the one where you're just like, okay, I'll throw it in the bag and I'll take it with me to the shop so that I have it if I need it. But then I also just did this, I guess, third.
You could call it a special edition, right? Is it a special edition?
Special edition for the Corning Museum of Glass. They wanted a collection for their Rakow Research Library. And the way that kind of came about is they were like, hi, we want a copy of the original. And I was like, I don't have any more. And they were like, we'll pay you to make it. And I was like, no, I'm not going to do that again. The process of the first one was 3 months of printing every day. I got abs from doing all screen printing.
The core workout. Print is a full body workout.
I loved it. I'm so glad I got to do it. I had a blast doing it. And I just don't think anybody could pay me enough money to do it again. But I had a few artist proof copies that were unfinished. So they funded my ability to fill out those artist proof copies. So then instead of them being part of the first edition artist proof copies, they got schlopped off into this special edition of 5. And that book is awesome. I mean, I just wanted to make it really special. So I gave it a holographic gilt leather cover, which is like a holographic title kind of impressed into leather. And then coil bound. Instead of silver, it's a golden coil. It has a foreword by Kate Hush, and she was just so pivotal, and like she's been so pivotal in my entire like neon world career. But she was just right there with the book, and I love that lady. Let's see what else is there. There's a Polaroid from production, so from like a moment in time, each copy of the first of those come with a Polaroid. And then there's a Mylar page so that the reader can see themselves in the book, like as they're entering the text. And I think just like funding for artists to explore like the evolution of a project is really important. So I'm really grateful that Corning was able to kind of offset like the labor and production, and they're so excited about it, and I get to go see it in a week. I get to go talk about it in a week, and I'm
awesome.
Thrilled.
Yeah, just kind of closing off on the books here, some people don't like there's more books out there about stuff, but like it's important. I think it's important to have a lot of different ways someone's looking at information. I have a huge collection of books right here and behind me. And once I start understanding stuff, the books that I thought it didn't mean anything to me, the more stuff came out of it. I think a lot of people don't look at books as reusable resources as much. Like, you got to read it. There's going to be things you understand at that level. Maybe a few years down the line, you understand more, and then there's more value out of that for you because you can understand what you are reading. And sort of like the earlier you can get someone into the comprehensive range of this material, the more value these other books have, especially if they can still be acquired.
Yeah, absolutely. I think part of like my teaching methodology ends up being kind of these interdisciplinary approaches to bring the variety of learning modalities that people work with to the classroom. So I can say the same thing like 8 times, but maybe it's the way that your peer says it to you that it clicks, or I can show you how to do a wall mounted demonstration on how to like mount your neon on a wall, or like maybe you weren't paying attention,
Yeah, that happens.
Maybe you're on your phone then, I don't know. But I have like a installation video now. So that's like whenever I'm dropping off a piece and I'm not able to install, I'm like, here's a link to this like open source YouTube video about how to hang your neon in space. And it's like on a green screen background. So it's still a wall mounted, demonstration, but it kind of stands in as this opportunity for like endless options for how you might install your work. Right.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm always kind of trying to bring in these like auxiliary media, these other ways of absorbing the material, because I mean, it's even helpful for me to kind of translate it and think around it. But yeah, I mean, and books create just this imaginative space, right? Like you're there with the text, but like whatever's happening at the same time as you reading it is like such a personal experience. And I think that's really powerful. And I'm like really happy to be able to be there with people when they're thinking about neon and learning about neon. It makes me happy.
Yeah. So let's talk a little about, teaching here. As a teaching artist at NYU and SAIC, how do you balance the roles of educator and artist? And how does teaching influence your own creative practice?
They're so entwined. It's so fun. I mean, I think a lot with these kind of making the installation videos and making I just introducing other media to the class as a way to absorb, I think, is very important. But schools alone are just environments where anything is possible, like if it's hopefully,
yeah.
right?
That's the goal, right?
Like, the mindset of it is just like anything's possible, so I think it's a great place to think in. I think it's a great place to work in. And I get to share that space with students from diverse backgrounds and practices. And that means that everyone is kind of feeding into this fertile void of what can be of this class time that we have together. And so, I like to introduce content through a variety of access points. I also do a lot of poster work. I do a lot of diagrammatic posters. So like neon color, I have a poster for that, right?
Yeah.
And there's one at the Museum of Neon Art. So every time I teach, we do our introductions and, hi, I'm Kacie. I'm from Missouri. I live in New York and Chicago. And, I have a background in print and sculpture. Like, tell me you. We do all that. And then the first question someone says is, so do you get the color by mixing the gases? And I say, well, I pull out this poster to kind of walk through like all the components that contribute to how color is made in neon, from phosphors and and the amperage of the electrode, things like that to consider. And then people are like, wait, this is not what I thought, but I'm seeing pictures. I'm like getting it at my own rate. I do a lot of like first person POV install shots for my class too. So like
those are good.
Yeah, I think, and they're always different scenarios, right? They're always it's always a different wall. It's always a different like sky. You always have different tools, you have different transformers. You're just like, what can I make do with? And that, I do a lot of art installation for art fairs. Like I get paid to work with galleries to put artwork up on walls. And whenever that's neon, maybe not every time, but a lot of times I'll just like snap a photo on my phone and like we'll kind of walk through as a class, like, oh, this is like how someone packed the work and it made it safe. And like, how do you feel about that? Because every packing job is different.
Yep.
And then I'll go through and photograph like every neon that's on view at Art Basel Miami Beach, and then we'll come back and we'll see like, this is what's out now, contemporary art neon, like what's missing, what are we noticing, what do we like, when we kind of just reduce what's going on to like a few ideas of what we want to do and how we can kind of spin off of that or fill in the void and kind of create the thing that isn't there. And I think that's always like a positive place to start from.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of the like interdisciplinary and like cross-disciplinary collaborations challenge the students to think critically, and to think creatively about ways that neon can interact with other fields, from physics and engineering and sociology and environmental studies, and kind of just make those connections to places that are outside of the classroom.
Awesome. Well, when we're ready to have you teach here in Pittsburgh, you can start pointing. When people ask, well, what about the colors of this? You can point to one of our museums where we have they have a huge, like a, gem and stone collection, where there's a tiny little like 5x6 area that has phosphors and tells you about the properties and different stones that produce different colors, which is super amazing. I always point that out when I do like demonstration for kids at the Glass Center. So like,
is it UV reactive?
Yeah.
I want to go see it.
So either, anytime you end up visiting here or when we're ready to have you come in and teach, we can make that part of the resource too.
Heck yes. There's an artist, Park MacArthur, who she said something a long while ago that I really just got sucked in on. And in an article, she said, like, how do you show how something works and then make something with its working? And I think that's really a nice curve in like the teaching artist kind of world. Like, how do you show how something works and then make something with it's working. And I think Steph Lifshitz and I have talked about this a lot too, is like, she makes the splice class.
Mm-hmm.
She does a class where you splice together different color glass. And she used the word splice with splices in it to show you what splicing is. And I like, it's like those kinds of things just hit you at like an intrinsic level where you're like, I don't have to think about it. I just absorb it. I just know it. And I think that's a good way in.
Yeah. Well, I kind of get it, but I have to ask this question no matter what, no matter who it is, there's something different that happens here. So, neon art is distinctive. It has a different appeal, has cultural significance. What do you believe draws people to the glow of neon, whether it's artistically or emotionally? And I'll add one extra one on there. How does neon feel different than the light provided by LED?
Oh, wow. We're going to go there.
We have to, because there's a place for both of them.
Yeah. I think, neon's so special. I think neon kind of breathes color at you. I think it kind of is just, it has this yummy hum to it. It's almost kind of like this white noise draw where you're just like feeling the electrical activity in its presence. Like I think it has kind of a bodily life presence to it, that we're drawn to. It's got a pulse, it's got a heartbeat. It's like, I also find it very catalytic, very very affective is a word that I like to use when I'm talking about color and light a lot, because it's like, what kinds of situations are you put in where you become changed, right? Like something is different about this environment, and like it has its own kind of ideas of presence and time and setting. So I think that kind of draw and cultural significance is physical. I just think it's a presence. I don't know why I'm thinking all of a sudden now about, there's this history in neon of the first neon sign in America, which from my research was in California.
Oh.
And it was this car sign, or I guess it was the first commercial neon sign in America, but for Packard cars, and they put it on the corner of a building like in Los Angeles, and it was so bright and so attractive that just there were car accidents at this intersection all the time. So they're just like,
well, yeah.
They're like, well, what? So it just takes over your mind a little bit, and I think a lot about light as kind of this origin of time, this origin of cosmos, this like originating draw and explosion into all of these other things that can be. So what is that draw? What is that glow that brings us close? I think it's kind of this like hum of origin, kind of like a calling back to Big Bang kind of cosmos sector. How does that change from LED? Yeah, I don't know. I think it's a quality of light thing. I find that a lot of the like blue and yellow of like the blue versus the yellow of like LED versus like warm light. I don't know. I guess it's just like a presence thing. It's a little shallower. It's less warm in my opinion, but like also LEDs are getting really good. So I can't really like argue with them. And I think that they're a really approachable way for people to work with light as a medium that don't have the like super specific facilities that neon need, right? So it's like, how can we create as a 13-year-old in our basement with some, I like eel wire or some of that. Like, have you seen the nudes, the noodle wire?
Yeah. I've seen those.
dudes. But yeah, they like those are really cool. There's versions of those that are kind of like based off of Nixie tubes too. So you can get them guys like kind of these like flat sticks.
Wow.
Which is kind of cool. So there's all sorts of ways into working with light and just like being present with light and thinking about how that affects our worlds. And
LED is improving in their quality, and I think sort of the cultural aspect is shifting. So like, let me like do a quick exercise with you. I guess I'm saying exercise sounds smart, but really imagine when you think about neon, what places do you think of where neon exists?
Well, this is a tricky question for me because these are questions I ask the students. You know, I just like I don't show. There's like 2 art pieces I show in my intro to neon art slideshow. I do a lot of history. I do a lot of what's going on in the tube. I do a lot of this is neon, but I don't show neon art specifically because I think they already know what they want to make.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't want to be influencing that. I want them to get that out first. And then after we get that first one out, whatever you've learned in the process of making that first one is what informs your second one. You know, like there's no way around it. It's just how it works. So I don't really like to show a lot of art. I show 2 pieces. I show the True Artist, The Mystic Truths by Bruce Nauman. Which is the whole phrase of course, which I'm totally blanking on right now. The True Artist helps the world by revealing mystic truths, some form of those letters. But I show that in tandem with another piece by an artist named Lady Churchman, who made an illustration of that piece in like different colors. And at first, when I saw that illustration at Art Basel, I was like, this is just a drawing of a glow, you know, like I was like, it's not a neon, it's not a thing. And then I saw it again and again and again. And I started being like, wow, this thing is amazing. It's really just appreciating the glow of this piece and how it can kind of speak in just its like material tone, right? Like even if we remove all of the light from it, like it's actually still expressing so much by just speaking on the glow and drawing the like wiring to the transformer, you know, and like really highlighting that. And it just made me so happy to see neon be loved like that in a drawing. And then I show some pieces by Martin Chuzon because he is from Argentina and he's making these works where he uses blockout paint and flocking. So he's using these neon pieces that are functional because they're wired together with all the other pieces, but they're completely blocked out. So like the opposite of neon, right?
Yeah.
We're taking the glow completely away. And like they're connected with other pieces that light up, right? So there is light in the assemblage, but they just like totally mess with my thought process of neon. I guess I would also show Robert Barry's like he does these performance pieces in the 60s where he would just release canisters of gas back into the air. So the piece would be called like helium, and it's just a picture of a gas canister like in the desert. And like that's it, you know? And I just, like,
that's actually quite interesting. Yeah.
Well, we're thinking about neon kind of like not as these traditional signage, advertising and signage based works, which is the answer to your question. Like, what do I think of when I think of neon? It's like, you think of like Nathan's hot dogs. You think of like all of these like classic signs that sell a third party product, right? So it's kind of this language between purchasing, you know, between consumerism, you know.
Awesome.
Long way around, but
no, that's a great, like, I get so many different expressions. Sometimes I have to help a little bit more, but like this is awesome because like usually I like the shorthand to get people is like, you know, where do you think you see neon at, and how do you feel if that was, say, you took a neon sign and put it in a doctor's office, or what's in a doctor's office? Usually LED, and it's like very sterile, which is gives you that cultural and like even if I don't say the word, you feel like one place is warmer, one place is colder, one place is more social, one place is more distant, meaning sterile. So it's like, it's fascinating that you've gone about the route, even in teaching, to just kind of give examples of way neon has been seen, not just in neon as the complete combination of materials in the process, but in the ways that the complete process, the idea of the process, the light being presented, becoming other aspects, emotions, movements, and visuals, and things of that sort.
Yeah, I think there's also like I worked in like this. I had a lot of odd jobs in my day. I don't know. I think maybe that's contemporary. But I think I worked this Canal Street Market place a few years ago for an employer I used to work for who did like kites and quilts and things like this, and it was really wonderful, kind of a summer job. And they opened like a food hall next to it, and the food hall was required to have their signage be neon. You know?
Yeah.
And so you're like, oh, what is that like cultural thing they're looking for? Like, what do they want out of like demanding that the people's signs be neon? And they were awesome. All these signs were so like intricate, and they must have been hooked up with like a great vendor. But it was kind of interesting to like see that as like a demanding principle for design, right? So the designers of the space are thinking that they want this kind of a feeling on their atmosphere and their space, and that's going to translate into more sales, and that's going to translate into people feeling welcome and invited into the space. And then in LA a few years, I mean, I'm just going to go on. In LA a few years ago, I was doing the inaugural like She Ben's residency with this housing complex Central in downtown LA. They had a bunch of unused storefront space that She Ben's turned into a studio on the ground floor, which was really, really cool. And in being in the theater district downtown, I started looking at all the old theaters and all the old neon signs, and there's not a ton of them left, but there were plenty, plenty. Yeah. And then I started researching kind of these Broadway theater district design guides, right? So similar to like the NASA style guide.
Yeah.
Right? Going back to kind of find these references, and they just had all these rules about neon and how you can and can't use it. And it's just funny to think that like, we don't have to have those rules in the classroom. You can look at them, you can hear them, and you can read about them. But what people hate about it so much, you can just work with that. You can use that. Or, what people love about it so much, you can work with that too.
All right, two last kind of questions I want to ask. And I'll start with one of them here. You did a lecture at the Pratt Foundation Lab at Pratt Institute. How did those interactions with those students and fellow artists inspire your own work? And what was it like what was that experience overall?
I had such a great time at Pratt. Like the Foundations Lab is a magical place, and there's like specimens and like all of these scientific tools to be able to like engage with material at a like not directly visual level, right? Like still visual. Everyone I met was so cool. All the questions that everybody had from the presentation were great. I think it was kind of a different way than I'm used to giving a presentation, because I did a walkthrough of some projects I had coming up for the Contemporary Jewish Museum, and a show that's up right now. And it's just some of the weirdest work. It's a She Ben show as well. And like, it's just some of the weirdest work I think that I've ever made in like neon. And, they asked me to be in their show sometimes because I think everyone does like a neon based work. And then I'm always like, here's video. Like, here's like a display case about the book, and then for this piece, for this show, I was doing, I did like a wall sized fuzzy poster that people could color in about deep space. So people could use fluorescent pencils to color in the James Webb Space Telescope image taken in 2022. So like then they use like a UV light to like see how their color drawings become activated, but also to just kind of think about like if this is as far back in space as we've seen, and this is like as far out as we can go, like what new elements or new phases of matter or like new colors might be out there, which I understand we're looking back in history, so it's like not really new, but still discovery, right? So that was a really great kind of spin-off of neon that I really liked. And then the other piece I did was a white wall using phosphor powders and gel medium, and then kind of suspending those phosphor powders, like the color elements from the inside neon tubes, with into kind of an action painting on the wall. So it's just a white wall and it just has like nothing on it. Like, you're like, oh, I forgot to put something over here and it looks kind of dirty. But then you take a UV flashlight and you can discover this like hidden illuminated action painting. So it's like this whole rainbow under there. And
That's
the
awesome.
only area that you can illuminate at one time is like 12 inches or something like that, because that's the reach of the flashlight. So those pieces speak to what neon is in a way of using the materials in a way of not actually making glasswork that's like expensive to ship and stuff like this and fragile and stuff like this. So I got to kind of use that Pratt lecture to walk through some of the proposal images and like show some teasers, and kind of instead of showing like solid artwork history, which is sometimes like what you do for an artist lecture. I think it just led to some really interesting conversations. And I met Becca, who is out of there, and she just had this like incredible exhibition about like the color of microscopic organisms, and it has to do with like polarization and all this stuff. So there's kind of this like hidden rainbow in these microscopic organisms, and I highly suggest checking out her show that's up right now. I can send you a link when we wrap.
That is awesome. I mean, I just hearing you talk about the phosphor powder painting, if we can call it a painting. My brain just starts going, that's pretty expensive.
Yeah.
Well, but it's amazing that I love that you did that. Like you're an alchemist. You're a true alchemist. You're taking and deconstructing and reconstructing.
Thanks. Yeah. And I, they had funding for the show, which is like also something I'm kind of new to. So I was like, like, how do we use this to the best of our advantage? And, I would not have been able to afford to do that project on my own. I just couldn't do it. This is like a 32-foot wall, like covered in phosphors, so it's like, it's a pretty epic experience.
And then the last question I want to ask here is, looking ahead, what projects or themes are you currently exploring in your practice? And are there any upcoming exhibitions or collaborations that you're particularly excited about?
Yeah. This is, I'm traveling a lot, but like somehow this is like a slow year for me. So like, I'm doing a lot of teaching. I'm doing a lot of kind of like new courses. I really like to keep those workshops fresh. I think that the heart workshop that I do all over the country always goes really well, and people are really excited to have like an objective that they can reach in like the class time of 4 hours, and it just, neon can be fast. I think that's like what's great about a neon shop is like, they're like, okay, let's make this sign today for this business, blah, blah, blah. And it can be done that day. And that's not usually how my projects work. My projects longer than that. But yeah, so for the hearts class and for the spirals class, I keep teaching the spirals class, and it is mental and people love it. And it's like I do my demo and everybody's like, that's not really what the pattern looks like, like you're like close. but it's not really what the pattern looks like. And then they do it and they're like, look, I made this like rose shaped source, like underwater fish or this like galaxy. And like they just love the process. They love bending. And that's my number one goal is like, I want to get you to fall in love with bending because the processing and the installation, those are just different brains and different sides of it that you also have to do. But if you fall in love with bending, then the rest of it is not so problematic.
Yeah.
So I think like projects and things that I have going on are always kind of like course development. I'm doing like a new solar eclipse class that I just did in LA. That was really fun. Kind of make like circles and then we make their nice little crescents, which is like the hidden shape behind it. I'm doing that again with James Akers in New York here in a few weeks.
And have you taught with James before?
Yeah, we do a mirror class, and we're also doing a mirror class next week.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that is just so fun. People just bring stuff from like thrift stores that are glass, and then we just like coat things in glass and in mirror, and it's more alchemy. But then I think mostly what I'm looking forward to is the Glass Art Society conference in Berlin. I'm going to go this year. We were chatting about that a little bit before. I've been to Berlin like a handful of times since 2014, and I'm just always meeting people out there. Like I'm going to try to reconnect with Leonardo. If you don't know him, do you know Leonardo?
I know him through Ed Kirshner. He's loaning equipment for the conference.
Yes. He is such a nice dude. I like just walked up to his shop. I'm just that guy. Like all over the country, I'm that guy where I'm just like, oh, is there a neon shop close? Like maybe I should just go say hi. And I'm like, hey, what's up? And nobody expects that I know anything about what I'm talking about. And then like I say something about like an electrode cap, and they're like, oh, wait. And then we have conversations that are really fun and cool. And he was just always very generous and nice. So we chatted for a while, and he shows off all of his wares and stuff. And then I'm going to be working with Bookstaben to do either a lecture or a course out there. Probably not a course, probably a workshop or a lecture. But they've been carrying the second edition of Neon Primer for a year now. So
wow.
It's going to be really cool to see their space. They're like a letter and signage history museum, but they're building a neon shop, and they're just like the nicest people. So I can't wait to hang out with them.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
I can't wait to check that out as well. Do you know or are familiar with Harriet Collins?
Where's Harriet?
Harriet Collins is also in Berlin.
No, I don't think so. I don't think I know Harriet Collins yet.
She works out of Thomas Wendler's shop, Leonardo.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, right. Leonardo has a real name too. Cool. Yeah. Well, I can't wait to meet everybody. I mean, I've never been to a Glass Art Society conference, and I just became a member this year.
Okay. Well, I'm really hoping this goes very well. I think everything's really nice and easy to navigate compared to maybe our last international, which was in Murano.
Oh, wow.
That one was a little bit difficult. I think some of the mapping was making it very challenging for people to navigate because the conference map was not matched with the actual mapping of the area. So it was not such a great navigational experience, but it's so far from sort of behind the scenes here, things are looking really good for Berlin for our conference this year.
Well, let's hang. Let's get a currywurst.
Currywurst.
It's the thing. I'll show you.
Okay, all right. You will teach me about the area then.
Yeah, it's gonna be great. I can't wait. And yeah, I don't even know who I'm gonna meet there. I feel like neon is like. Are there a lot of neon people that go to the Glass Arts Society events? I feel like it's such a weird.
It's been increasing because of the ask for neon to be present in the conference. I think it's mostly like just some like information on that is that, PAA, the Plasma Art Alliance, has kind of been putting plasma in there by injecting it as much as possible. So we're bringing it to those spaces and connecting with those places. But then, like, because of that, people also want to see neon. So I think really one of the bigger, most recent exhibitions, not exhibition, but recent conferences where neon's been present was starting with Toledo, and then you had Detroit.
Yeah.
Also had a really good spot for neon, which is, and that kind of momentum is what they're trying to keep moving forward. I think it was really challenging to set up for Berlin. We definitely could. I definitely could have seen more neon demonstrations, at least a total of 3 or 5. But it seems like that wasn't that didn't happen somehow. And I came in late into my term, so I came in October last year, which is they already were in full force planning, and they already had their applicants submitted by then. So I think it's still going to be good. You got people like Baron Weinmeier, which will be there. I'm hoping to talk to him for the first time in person, not just through email rereading of his interview. Ed's going to be there. It's probably going to be his last conference. He's not really fit for traveling too much. And then there's some students that we've met that might be dropping through. I think Camilla Mraz, will be attending the conference. So I'm excited to meet her. So we're seeing people with gas and luminous experience coming through, and who knows who else is dropping through that's coming from the US or coming through in the area for Europe. Maybe Tommy will be by, but Tommy's such a busy guy that, he may not drop through, but
yeah, I haven't met Camilla either, and we're in the show in California together right now. Mm-hmm. But I couldn't go to the opening because I was somewhere else, so we didn't get to cross over. But now we will. That's awesome. I'm so excited.
All right. Well, bonus question.
Okay.
This is the fun question that Daniel James and Allison Buchanan asked me from their podcast Neon Nonsense. What kind of ritual do you do in neon or in preparation for neon?
That is such a good question. So I think that like what you listen to and like what mood you're in is like pivotal when you're making neon work. Like you have to set yourself up because there's just so many distractions and so many things can go wrong. And if like you're standing weird or like whatever, like you could ruin it. Right. So my, one of my teaching lessons is like, you have to be comfortable. Like you just come out of the fire. If you're uncomfortable, reset yourself and whatever. But what are my like personal rituals? I listen to this. I'm like a big West Wing nerd, the Aaron Sorkin TV show from like the 2000s. And there's a episode by episode podcast that has Josh Malina, which is one of the actors, and then Rishikesh Hirway, who is like a super fan. And they kind of go episode by episode through, and it's very silly. And they have just like these old jokes that go back like podcast seasons, so I'm bending and I only have a few episodes left, honestly. I'm like almost at the end, but like if I'm bending, I put that on, and then all of a sudden you'll just see me in the corner like cracking up where it's just it's a rabbit hole of jokes. But yeah, I think that's what I like to do. Big snacks are important.
Snacks are important.
But other than that, it's kind of my key. It's my ticket.
Yeah. I usually do something. If I'm going to be doing a task that requires a lot of focus, I will eat eggs for breakfast. And the way I cook my eggs, and it determines how I will handle my mental state during the whole day. Because eggs has a particular timing to it. You cook it too long, you wait too long to put the eggs in, or you wait too long when you have the butter in there, or whatever. It changes the flavor, and that tells me something that I need to adjust for the day.
It's like the tea leaves for your bed.
All right. Yeah.
That's a great question.
Well, thank you. Thank you for being on the podcast. And I'll try to link all the different lectures and all the different things you mentioned in the podcast. I think these are things that people should look at and see on the blog for the Taming Lightning website. Any last things you want to say before we close out?
Just thanks so much. I'm a big fan of plasma and always trying to kind of make that connection between neon and plasma. So yeah, hopefully we can work together to like streamline that. So multiply the world of neon and plasma.
Heck yeah.
Sure. Thanks so much, Percy.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Taming Lightning podcast. Music credits to the following artists in order of appearance. Retro by One. The opening theme, Taming Lightning by Trav B. Ryan. And Walking by Raz Hobb. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Thank you, Kacie, for joining me for this podcast. Glad we got to talk about your neon primer, and I'm excited to have you teach at PGC when our new neon studio and program are up and running. I'd like to thank the Pittsburgh Glass Center for supporting me as a place of research and inspiration, the Plasma Art Alliance, Neon Makers Guild, and the Facebook group Neon and Plasma Art for Beginners, where I can connect to an amazing community of knowledgeable and supportive people. Thank you for supporting Taming Lightning. Please support Taming Lightning by subscribing to the newsletter on www.taminglightning.net or follow on Instagram at Taming Lightning. Other options for support are one-time donations through Ko-fi, spelled ko-fi.com/Taming Lightning, or you may join me on Patreon for additional perks and benefits. I'll have links provided in the show notes. Feel free to share, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.